Shalom Aleichem. What's your name?
Lechem Shalom. Jerry Friedman.
Jerry. What is your English name? I'm kidding.
Yisrael.
Yisrael. But your friends call you Jerry.
My friends call me Frenchie. Don't ask me why. I respond to a lot of different names.
Tell me what you do. What's your parnasa?
Yeah, so I run a company called Freedom Business Financing.
Okay.
We're essentially brokers. We help businesses procure SBA 7A loans, SBA 504 loans, and business lines of credit.
Stop. Explain what you just said.
So businesses need capital for various purposes. Maybe it's for working capital. Maybe it's to buy a building that they're going to occupy. Maybe they need to buy equipment. So how are they financing that? Where are they getting the financing from? So the SBA has a program that's around probably for the last 50, 60, 70 years. It kind of runs through regular banks. Banks kind of make loans to businesses using the SBA's guarantee.
For those that don't know, what's the SBA?
SBA is the Small Business Administration. It's a federal agency.
I'll tell you why I bring it up. I'll stop you for a second. Many people who are in businesses, I'm sure you encounter this all the time, are simply unaware of the concept of a business loan. They're unaware that the government will even help you with any loan. They just don't know about it, right? That's why I think it's important to educate people. Let's start from the scratch. What's an SBA? How can you get it? You know, people have no idea. They think the only way to get money, Yankel got to lend me some money.
100%. I think another angle, it's maybe sometimes they know about financing and they know the concepts out there, but they actually think that financing is a bad thing. And in reality, right, we think about financing in our personal lives, other than buying a house or a car, we think of like credit card that is like, I can't, someone can't pay their bills, so they got to rely on the bank.
In your mind, finance is like, oh, I'm going to owe money forever.
Exactly, but in a business, it's actually a tool to help a business grow.
So let's see, let's hold that thought. We'll start from the beginning again. So you do SBA, explain what SBA is, Small Business Association.
So the Small Business Administration has this program where if a bank participates in the program, they can make a loan to a business, a small or medium-sized business, and that loan will have a guarantee from the SBA. So it effectively allows a bank to make a loan to a business that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have done because it's too risky. And historically, banks are ultra-conservative, so that guarantee allows them to make that loan. Additionally, because they have that guarantee, so it allows them to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do, offer certain terms and structure loans a certain way that make them way more favorable for small businesses.
Right, so to explain to a person can't go to the SBA and get a loan, right? It has to go through a bank, and the government guarantees it, which makes it easier for them to work it that way.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's your background? How did you get into this business?
Yeah, interesting. So my background's in accounting and auditing and CFO work. I was an auditor. I worked for a few public accounting firms for about 5 years. Really, I entered into the accounting world because it's a good avenue to get good exposure into businesses. It's very well-rounded. As an auditor of private companies, which we audited companies because they had bank loans, and banks wanted to get some assurance that these companies are healthy, we really get to see the ins and outs of a company. And it's not just the financials necessarily, it's the operations, the sales side. We really turned companies inside out. So I did that for about 5 years. I left, I became the CFO of a distribution company. I did that for a little more than a year before I said I'm done working for people. And I really wanted to go out on my own. Thankfully, I had the support of my wife. And really, I set out to be initially more like a fractional CFO, where companies can't afford to pay a CFO $200,000, $300,000. So instead, you come in on a monthly basis.
There's tons of these companies now, the remote CFOs.
Exactly. So yeah, back then it was a little bit more novel. This is the beginning of 2018. I started seeing how there's just this massive demand where companies needed capital. Either, like you said, they're calling their friends. Maybe they think they can't get approved, or they're actually going to banks, but they couldn't really tell their story properly. The numbers didn't jive with the story they were telling. They had a hard time pulling it all together. Banks definitely want a nice, strong, robust package. So initially, I approached a friend. I asked him, hey, what if I start helping companies get financing? Forget about the CFO stuff. I saw the demand. The need was there, and I just wanted to gather his thoughts. He's like, you know what, Jerry, it's a great idea. I'm going to be your first client. And he asked me to get him a couple of $100,000, and I ended up getting him close to $1 million, and it just blew his mind. It was really good, real good proof of concept. At that point, which was probably 7, 8, 9 months after I went out on my own, I said, okay, there's something real here. There's really something here. And I kind of pivoted. I stopped the CFO stuff, and I said, I'm the financing guy. You need a line of credit. You need an SBA loan. And Baruch Hashem, we've grown. We're growing, continuing to grow.
Let's just understand the business model, essentially. Sure. Right? We said there's the SBA. They guarantee the loan. The bank is the client. You're in between them, right? In other words, a person could technically doesn't need you and go to the bank, right? But you're going to help them do a better job at getting that money, correct? Essentially. And how do you get paid? Is it percentage based? How does it work in your business?
So it depends. Sometimes we get from lenders. Sometimes we get directly from the client. It really depends on the loan type.
There are banks that will give you money to facilitate loans?
Specifically in the SBA space.
Interesting.
Because it gets a little bit complicated, but they sell off the loan into the secondary market, and they're serving the loan, so they're making money from a lot of different areas, and they're willing to share some of that with the broker.
So your job is helping the client prepare his, let's call it paperwork, for lack of a better term, making sure they qualify. Obviously, it's basically helping them get the loan, so they wouldn't be able to figure out themselves. It's not just filling out paperwork, like you said,
Exactly.
helping them, explaining
Yeah.
to them.
And really, my background in accounting and auditing is really where I add the most value because I'm able to really dissect and underwrite a company and say, okay, well, they're looking for X. They're actually a good fit for X because we underwrote them, we underwrote their company. We're not brokers in the sense that we're running around to 5,000 banks hoping, that it sticks somewhere. We have a very wide but close network of banks. We know exactly what their credit box is, what kinds of deals they want to do, what they love, what they don't love.
It is interesting you say that because I was going to ask you that question, right? Someone has a business, whatever the business is, right? It can be high risk. Some banks are willing to work with that. Some banks are not willing to work with that. So I would think that you would have to actually have more banks willing to work with you than less in order to be able to facilitate the shadchan part,
Right, 100%, but you can't have 1,000 banks and possibly 1,000 banks credit boxes. The point is to
I hear you.
build enough relationships and really get a good understanding of what they're looking to do, and that kind of is where we add a tremendous amount of value.
Is this your first year at the OGBA?
No, it's actually our third year.
Did you ever get business from here?
So it's interesting. I thought you were going to ask this question. Part of why we exhibit is it's more than just seeing a direct return from a show, because first of all, the life cycle of a deal could span months, sometimes even 6 months to a year potentially. But really, you come here to, we meet tons of existing clients. Also, there's plenty of people we've spoken to who maybe we never actually consummated anything with them, but this is another opportunity to get in front of their faces. Plus, our marketing approach is very broad. Like, I'm super active on LinkedIn, social media, WhatsApp. People already know me, and sometimes coming to a show and putting a face.
So is that a very long way of telling me no? I'm just curious. Anyone that you trace back, you met at the show?
I can't directly attribute a closed deal to the show, to OJBA, but it's done other things for me. For example, the last show was when I met one of my business development guys, and that's when we started talking about it. And he joined my company in January.
See, you should have said that at the beginning. It would have sounded a lot better than that. I'll tell you why, because you never know. Like you said, you never know what should come out of this, right? You're networking. The fact you got a great employee is amazing. But let's talk about your business for a second. I want to understand. There's so many people who do financing. So many people. Exhausting amount of people in a certain sense. How do you able to separate yourself? In other words, my question is not just for you. I want to give this advice to anybody who's going to watch this. If you're in a business that you do a lot, right? Hi, I get you financing. Okay, thank you. 18 people told me the exact same thing. What are you going to do different for me?
So the short answer is there's not a lot of people that do what we do, right? So you have the commercial mortgage brokers out there. You have the residential mortgage brokers. You have the private financing guys. There's not a lot of people that focus on SBA loans or business financing specifically.
Open up a Jewish magazine. There's quite a few ads every week in it.
Okay, fine. So what you're seeing these people advertising are generally not what we're doing.
So explain.
There's a lot of brokers out there who sell smaller, faster, easier products to get. But if you come to them and say, hey, I need a $4 or $5 million SBA loan, they can't help you. And that's what most of them are selling.
Is that your niche? You're trying to do hard stuff as well?
It is definitely our expertise. Our expertise is larger SBA loans, SBA transactions. We do the smaller ones too, but that's less of a chachma. Our expertise is really dissecting and tearing apart companies and trying to get them the maximum they possibly could get or helping them achieve what they're looking to get.
I'm going to rephrase your words. I think I got what you're saying. You're trying to say like this. You say, look, when someone wants to get an SBA loan, they need a few dollars. There's not too much to understand about the business. But if you want to get a big loan, you need someone to delve into how the business works so you can present it better to the banks as far as presentation is concerned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. If you look at it like this, there's different tranches. If someone's looking to get $250,000, it's one set of underwriting rules. Someone's looking to get $250,000 to $500,000, it's a different set. Once you start heading above the $500,000 territory, it's like a whole different ballgame. So most of what you see out there are below 500, generally below 250. Once you start heading above that 500, it's when banks really start tearing apart a business.
Right, so your job is to present them the best, right?
Yes.
So now I want to get to what you said originally. You said originally that you think that people don't realize that financing is not a bad thing. Explain that.
So, just to reiterate what I said, right? So again, personal lives, you need to rack up credit card debt. It's because someone's struggling,
You'd rather not, exactly.
You'd rather not, right? In a business, though, there's many applications where you need a loan to grow, and it's actually going to help the business, right? The owner has to look at it in that frame, otherwise, they're going to be scrambling. Just to give you an example, right? A typical line of credit. Why does a business need a line of credit? The short answer is because...
They don't have money now. What does it mean?
But why don't they have money? There's something called a healthy cash crunch. Why are they having a cash crunch? And it's not because they're losing money. It's because they're losing money. Then they have a whole different set of tsaras, which they need other kinds of help, and a loan possibly can't help them. A typical scenario is where a company has to buy inventory. It's going to take 30 to 60 days to get that inventory.
Right.
They get that inventory, they're selling it to their customers, their wholesale customers. Hey, their customers want terms, maybe net 30, net 60. So you're talking about 90 to 120 day gap where they're laying out all this money to buy inventory plus float to customer from when they're selling it. Now they have to make overhead. They have to make payroll, right? They have to put deposits down on inventory. They also have to pay in full, likely when it gets delivered. Where's that money coming from? The short answer is a nice line of credit from a conventional bank really helps bridge that gap. So that's like the simple example. On the flip side, you have a company that says, hey, you know what? We do roll-off dumpsters, right? But hey, we do roll-off dumpsters, so we know all the guys doing demolition. Why don't we do demolition ourselves? But guess what? You got to go buy equipment to do that. You have to hire more people. So you have the expansion aspect where you need that financing to help you get from point A to point B.
If you want to grow by doing a big chunk, you need to do that. I want to ask you about the other side, which I'm not sure people think about. I don't know if you've ever encountered this yet. Have you had clients who couldn't pay the loan? Like they got stuck. They did it and it didn't work out. And that's an uncomfortable thing people don't think about, unfortunately. But does that happen a lot in your business?
I think it's happened once in the 7 years I'm doing this. And that actually, we financed a business acquisition. The seller didn't disclose certain pertinent details to the buyer. Baruch Hashem, our clients generally don't struggle with those things. And I think the biggest reason why is because when we have that initial discussion with our clients, what is your strategy? What are you looking for financing for? We kind of try to hone in on why they're looking for financing, making sure that it's for a healthy reason and that they actually have a plan to deploy the funds.
So I like what you're saying, because with this, I think what you're saying is that what you do is not just making the numbers look good, right? In other words, there's two ways, let's put it out in the open, right? There are people that can get people loans because they know how to get people loans. They can make sure the numbers work well and they'll get the person the loan. Whether it's this bank, that bank, they'll figure it out. I think what you're trying to say, what separates yourself, I'm just getting you the money. I get you money that's going to work for you because you can make it work. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good, yeah. You should work for us.
Okay, but
business development.
It's very expensive. Okay, so you look like a very smart guy, Jerry. I like asking people how they handle stress because the people always, it's like a catchphrase. People want to know.
I think you ask that every week, right?
I ask it every week in AMI. You know what's funny? At one point I stopped. I said, all right, it's a fun question, but good enough, you know. Then they go, how could we ask you about this question? So one day I'm going to put out a book, 4,000 ways how to deal with stress. So how do you handle stress?
Yeah, I mean, you probably get the Muna Pshuta answer, one at...
So I'll tell you, I do get that answer a lot. And when I do, I usually grill them because I don't believe them. In other words, some people actually do live in Mun B'tachon. It's great. I'm jealous. I'm actually very jealous of some, quote-unquote, simple-looking balabatim that they can float because they're living like Kadosh Baruch Hu through anything that comes their way, which is not just business related. But let's hear your answer.
Yeah, so I would tell you two things. I mean, first of all, I do exercise a few times a week. I think people don't realize the amount of stress that you're able to release by physically working out, doing some strength training, running on a treadmill.
That's great.
Additionally, this may sound cliche, but you need to have a good close support group that really supports what you're doing, and it's probably a combination of your spouse, your Rav, and possibly a friend that actually understands what you're going through.
Not cliche, it's a correct answer. When you're at an event like this, you have a booth, right? What do you say to people to try to get into?
So interesting, at every show we go to, we raffle off a cool bottle of tequila or vodka. So it's a great way to get people in as I'm scanning their badge. Start chatting with them, and we see
even if not, you get the information. People don't understand that when you come to an event like this, and I think what you're saying is sometimes the most basic, simple thing is what works. Data. You need to get people's information. You're not getting a database of everyone who came here, but if they come to you, card or what they sign up, now I have someone I can call.
Right, but for us, information is less important than actually
Obviously,
what that 30-second interaction.
I agree, but you have both now. You have the 30-second interaction and the data. You can follow up with them.
100%.
I love the idea. Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.